Hello, welcome to Know About History channel. Hope you like it.
The history of armored warfare is often dominated by the steel giants of the Third Reich, the Tigers and Panthers that haunted the nightmares of Allied tank crews throughout the liberation of Europe. Yet, the most prolific and lethal tank commander of the Second World War was not a product of the Prussian military tradition but a lanky, soft-spoken former boxing champion and farmer from Texas named Lafayette G. Poole. Known to his men as War Daddy, a moniker later popularized by cinema but rooted in the gritty reality of the 3rd Armored Division, Poole achieved a record of destruction that remains unparalleled in American military annals. In a mere 81 days of combat, from the late June breakout in Normandy to the early September assault on the Siegfried Line, Poole and his singular, devoted crew of 4 men were credited with the destruction of 258 German vehicles, including at least 12 tanks, while capturing over 1,000 enemy soldiers and neutralizing countless anti-tank emplacements. This was not the result of a single lucky engagement or a defensive stand but a sustained, aggressive, and highly calculated campaign of mobile violence conducted from the turret of 3 successive M4 Sherman tanks, each christened with the defiant name, In the Mood. Lafayette Poole was born in Odem, Texas, in 1919, a child of the Great Depression who possessed a natural mechanical aptitude and a fierce competitive spirit. Before the war, he had been a semi-professional boxer, a background that arguably honed the lightning-fast reflexes and spatial awareness required for tank combat. When he joined the 3rd Armored Division, the legendary Spearhead, he brought with him a quintessentially American brand of tactical audacity. By 1944, he was a staff sergeant in the 32nd Armored Regiment, commanding a crew that would become as legendary as the man himself. This crew was a microcosm of the American industrial and social mobilization. Driver Wilbert "Red" Irvin, a man with a preternatural ability to navigate a 30-ton machine through mud and fire. Bow gunner Bert "Schoolboy" Close, the youngest of the group. Loader Del "Jailbird" Boggs, whose strength allowed him to slam 76mm shells into the breech with rhythmic precision. And gunner Willis "Groundhog" Oyer, a man whose eyesight and cool nerves under pressure turned the Sherman's main gun into a sniper's rifle. The technical context of Poole's success is critical to understanding the magnitude of his achievement. The M4 Sherman, particularly the M4A1, 76W variants he commanded, was often maligned for its perceived inferiority to German heavy armor. The Tommy Cooker, or Ronson, labels suggested a vulnerability to fire, yet Poole saw the Sherman differently. He appreciated its mechanical reliability, its superior turret traverse speed, and its mobility. He understood that in a tank duel, the commander who fired first usually won. Poole's tactical philosophy was predicated on speed and aggression. He did not wait for the enemy to reveal themselves, he hunted them. Operating as the point tank for the 3rd Armored's Combat Command A, Poole was almost always the first to engage. This point position was statistically the most dangerous in the entire division, yet Poole occupied it by choice, believing that his crew's superior coordination gave them the best chance of survival and success. The saga of In the Mood began in the aftermath of D-Day. While the initial hedgerow fighting in the Normandy bocage was a slow, agonizing grind, Poole's crew began to distinguish themselves through a series of quick-draw encounters. Their first major engagement occurred near the village of Couvains. Here, Poole encountered a concealed German position and, with a series of rapid-fire orders, neutralized several anti-tank guns and armored cars before the Germans could even range his tank. It was during these early weeks that the crew's synergy reached a state of near telepathy. Red Irvin didn't need to be told when to pivot. He felt the vibration of the gun firing and the shift in Poole's weight in the turret. Willis Oyer could acquire a target, calculate the lead, and fire in a matter of seconds, often while the tank was still in motion, a feat that German tank doctrine discouraged but Poole mastered. As Operation Cobra unleashed the Allied armies across the plains of France, the 3rd Armored Division lived up to its Spearhead name, and Lafayette Poole was the tip of that spear. The statistics began to mount at a staggering rate. During the race toward the Seine, Poole's crew was credited with destroying dozens of vehicles in a single day. One of his most famous exploits occurred at night near the town of Orony. Moving at high speed through a darkened village, Poole's Sherman rounded a corner and came face to face with a German Panther, a tank that outweighed and outgunned the Sherman in every measurable category. In a moment of pure instinct, Oyer fired a shell into the Panther's vulnerable turret ring, jamming the turret and causing the German crew to bail out. Before the night was over, Poole had destroyed 2 more tanks and several half-tracks, all while operating in a chaotic, low-visibility environment that would have paralyzed a less experienced commander. The psychological dimension of Poole's command was equally significant. He led by example, standing tall in the open hatch of his turret even under small arms fire to gain a better field of vision. This buttoned down versus eyes out approach was a frequent point of contention among tank commanders, but for Poole, the risk of a sniper's bullet was outweighed by the tactical advantage of a 360-degree view. His men trusted him implicitly, knowing that his Texas farmer exterior hid a brilliant tactical mind that viewed the battlefield as a complex geometry of fire and movement. He treated his crew not as subordinates but as an extension of the machine itself. When Boggs slammed a shell into the breach, he wasn't just loading a weapon, he was feeding the intent of the crew. By the time the spearhead reached the Belgian border, Poole was a living legend. He had outlived 2 tanks, both named In the Mood. The first was lost to a rocket-propelled grenade, Panzerfaust, and the second was a victim of friendly fire from a P-47 Thunderbolt that mistook the lead tank for a German target. In both instances, the crew escaped without serious injury, a testament to Poole's ability to get his men out of a burning wreck. The third, In the Mood, was an M4A1 with the long-barreled 76mm gun, providing the extra punch needed to penetrate the thicker frontal armor of the late-war German panzers. In the battle for Namur and the subsequent drive toward Liege, Poole's tally continued to grow. He was credited with destroying a series of German roadblocks and anti-tank batteries that had stalled other units. His method was often to charge the position at full speed, using his machine guns to suppress the crews while Oyer picked off the guns with high explosive rounds. The 81 days of Lafayette Poole's combat career concluded in September 1944, just as the Allies were preparing to breach the Siegfried Line and enter Germany. Near the town of Stolberg, Poole's luck finally ran out. Acting as the point tank once again, In the Mood 3 was moving through a narrow pass when it was ambushed by a concealed Panther or a heavy anti-tank gun. The first shell struck the Sherman's turret, and the second hit the hull, causing the tank to flip over and roll down an embankment. In the chaos of the impact, Poole was severely wounded, his leg nearly severed by shrapnel. As he lay on the ground, he reportedly tried to inject himself with morphine and continued to shout orders to his crew, checking on their status before himself. The rest of the crew, Irvin, Oyer, Boggs, and Close, survived the ordeal, though they were battered and shell-shocked. For the first time in 3 months, the In the Mood crew was broken. The medical evacuation of Lafayette Poole was as dramatic as his combat career. He underwent multiple surgeries, and his leg was eventually amputated above the knee. The war for the Texas farmer was over, but the data he left behind provided a stunning rebuttal to the idea that Allied tank crews were merely cannon fodder for the German panzer elite. While German aces like Michael Wittmann achieved higher total tank kills, they did so over years of combat on the Eastern Front, often in the formidable Tiger tank. Poole achieved his 258 vehicle kills in less than 3 months, in an inferior Sherman, and against a desperate, well-entrenched defender. His success proved that the American doctrine of flexible, high-speed, combined arms warfare, when executed by a crew with absolute technical mastery and unshakable morale, was the most lethal force on the European battlefield. Post-war, Poole returned to Texas, eventually re-enlisting in the Army despite his prosthetic leg. He served as an instructor, passing on his hard-won knowledge to a new generation of tankers during the early Cold War. He remained humble about his exploits, often attributing his success to the skill of his crew rather than his own leadership. Yet, the citations for his Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, and Legion of Merit tell a different story, a story of a man who looked at the ruins of a continent and saw not a maze of danger, but a series of tactical problems to be solved with steel and fire. The In the Mood crew represents the pinnacle of the American armored experience, a group of ordinary men who, through discipline and audacity, achieved the extraordinary. The historical analysis of Poole's 258 kills reveals a nuanced picture of mid-century combat. The tally included not just tanks, but armored vehicles, a category that encompassed self-propelled guns, half-tracks, and armored cars. To some, this might seem to diminish the record, but in the context of 1944, a German half-track armed with a 20mm cannon or an anti-tank team was as much a threat to the advance as a Tiger tank. By neutralizing these smaller threats with the same precision he applied to heavy armor, Poole ensured the continued momentum of the entire division. He understood that the spearhead could only function if the point remained sharp and the path remained clear. His ability to distinguish between targets and prioritize his fire was a hallmark of his tactical genius. The legacy of the Texas farmer is also a legacy of the M4 Sherman itself. The tank's critics often forget that its greatest asset was its crew-centric design. It was easier to escape from, easier to repair, and easier to see out of than many of its German counterparts. Poole utilized these features to their maximum potential. The 76mm gun, while still struggling against the frontal glacis of a King Tiger, was more than capable of defeating the ubiquitous Panzer IV and the side armor of any Panther. Poole's success was a marriage of man and machine, a synergy that turned a mass-produced industrial product into a precision instrument of war. The fact that the same crew stayed together through 3 tanks and 81 days of high-intensity combat is perhaps the most remarkable statistic of all, suggesting a level of psychological resilience that is rare even among elite units. In the decades following the war, the story of Lafayette Poole was largely kept within the circles of military historians and 3rd Armored Division veterans. It was only with the later resurgence of interest in the greatest generation and the gritty reality of tank combat that his name began to gain wider recognition. He stands as a reminder that the American military tradition is not just one of overwhelming logistical might, but of individual excellence and the cowboy spirit of the frontier. Lafayette Poole was a farmer who knew how to box, and when his country called, he took those skills into the turret of a Sherman and destroyed the myth of German armored invincibility. The technical proficiency of the "in the mood" crew can be further explored through the lens of Oyer's gunnery. Willis Oyer was known for his first-round hit capability. In the chaos of an encounter battle, where the target might only be visible for a few seconds through the dust and smoke, Oyer's ability to range a target by eye and deliver a round with a flat trajectory was decisive. This was aided by the Sherman's vertical stabilizer, a piece of technology that the Germans lacked. While not perfect, it allowed the gun to stay roughly on target while the tank was moving over uneven ground, giving the American crew a crucial few seconds advantage in getting the first shot off. Poole exploited this technological edge by never stopping his tank during an engagement if he could help it, making "in the mood" a much harder target to hit for the German anti-tank gunners. Similarly, Red Irvin's driving was a foundational element of their survival. Irvin knew how to use the terrain to his advantage, keeping the tank, hull down, behind ridges or using the ruins of French villages to mask their approach. He understood the limit of advance and the blind spots of the German optics. A tank is a blind beast, and the driver's eyes are as important as the commander's. Irvin and Poole developed a shorthand of kicks and shoves, a kick to the left shoulder for a left turn, a shove in the back for speed, that bypassed the need for the intercom during the loudest moments of battle. This physical connection between commander and driver allowed "in the mood" to move with a grace and unpredictability that confounded German defenders. Del Boggs, the loader, was the engine of the tank's fire rate. In a duel with a Panther, the Sherman's only hope was often to overwhelm the German crew with multiple hits before they could stabilize their own aim. Boggs could load the 76mm gun in under 4 seconds, a rate that allowed Oyer to walk his fire onto a target with terrifying speed. This high volume of fire was not just about destruction, it was about suppression. Even if a shell didn't penetrate, the impact of multiple high-velocity rounds on a German turret would often cause the crew to panic or suffer from concussive shock, ending their effectiveness as a fighting unit. Boggs' physical stamina was the silent heartbeat of the crew's success. Bert Close, in the bow, provided the close-in protection. Armed with a .30 caliber machine gun, he was the one who spotted and neutralized the tank hunters, German infantry armed with Panzerfausts who hid in the tall grass or behind walls. Close was the eyes for the lower half of the tank, covering the sectors that Poole couldn't see from the turret. His role was essential in the rat war of the hedgerows and urban ruins, where the greatest threat to a tank was often a single man in a cellar with a shaped charge rocket. The protection Close provided allowed Poole to focus on the big game of enemy armor and artillery. The 258 kills of the "in the mood" crew are not just a number. they represent a significant portion of the German logistical and combat power in the path of the 3rd Armored Division. Every vehicle destroyed by Poole was a vehicle that couldn't kill an American infantryman or delay the liberation of a French town. His career, though brief in terms of calendar days, was a lifetime of tactical evolution. He moved from the tentative probes of Normandy to the confident, high-speed slashes of the Belgian campaign. He demonstrated that the American soldier was not just a cog in a machine, but a thinking, adapting warrior who could master the complexities of industrial warfare. Lafayette Poole's injury and the destruction of In the Mood 3 marked the end of an era for the 3rd Armored. While the division continued to fight with distinction across the Rhine and into the heart of Germany, the loss of its most effective point commander was felt across the regiment. Poole's story, however, lived on in the after-action reports and the whispered legends of the motor pools. He was the man who had done it all, the farmer from Texas who had turned the tide of battles with a Texas-sized will and a crew that wouldn't quit. His record remains a benchmark for armored excellence, a testament to the power of the small unit in the face of grand historical forces. Reflecting on the Texas farmer moniker, it is clear that Poole's agricultural background was more than just a piece of trivia. It spoke to a pragmatism and a comfort with heavy machinery that was common among rural Americans of that era. To Poole, a tank was a tool, albeit a lethal one, that required maintenance, respect, and a firm hand. He didn't view the German panzers with the mythical awe that paralyzed some Allied crews. He viewed them as pests to be cleared from the field. This down-to-earth perspective was the foundation of his courage. He wasn't fighting for glory, he was doing a job, and he was determined to do it better than anyone else. The sheer density of combat Poole experienced in those 81 days is difficult to fathom. Most tank crews in the Second World War saw only a few minutes of intense action for every 100 hours of boredom and maintenance. Poole, by contrast, was in the kill zone almost every day. The constant stress of being the point tank, the endless noise of the engine and the radio, the smell of cordite and diesel, and the ever-present threat of a sudden, fiery death would have broken many men. Yet, Poole and his crew maintained their focus and their humanity. They were known for their professionalism and their lack of bravado. They were a precision kill team before the term existed. The technical specifications of the M4A1 76W in the Mood 3 were the final evolution of Poole's weapon. The W stood for wet stowage, a design change that placed the ammunition in water-jacketed racks to prevent the catastrophic fires that had plagued earlier Shermans. This made the tank significantly safer for the crew, allowing them to operate with more confidence in high-risk environments. The 76mm M1 gun was a significant upgrade over the original 75mm gun, offering higher muzzle velocity and better penetration. While it still required tactical finesse to defeat the heaviest German armor, it gave Poole the reach he needed to engage targets at longer ranges. This technical evolution, combined with Poole's tactical maturity, created a window of opportunity in late 1944 where the American tanker was briefly the dominant force on the battlefield. The final tally of 258 vehicles destroyed by a single crew in 81 days is a record that may never be broken. It stands as a monument to the effectiveness of the American Armored Division at its peak. It is a story of 5 men who, through a combination of luck, skill, and sheer Texan stubbornness, changed the course of the war in their sector. Lafayette Poole, the Texas farmer, remains the definitive American tank ace, a man who didn't just survive the ruins of Europe but mastered them. His legacy is one of precision, aggression, and the unshakable belief that even in the face of the most terrifying weapons the enemy could produce, a well-coordinated crew with the right mindset could prevail. The story of Lafayette Poole also serves as a critical historical correction. For too long, the narrative of the war in the West emphasized Allied numerical superiority at the expense of recognizing tactical and individual skill. Poole's career proves that Allied crews were capable of outdueling the best the Wehrmacht had to offer on an even, or even disadvantageous, playing field. His success was not about having more tanks, it was about being better with the one tank he had. This recognition of individual agency and skill is essential for a complete understanding of the Allied victory. The Texas farmer didn't just help win the war, he showed how to win it with style, precision, and a crew that was truly in the mood. Lafayette Poole passed away in 1991, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire those who study the art of the tank. His 3 Shermans are gone. The battlefields of France and Belgium have long since returned to farmland, but the memory of the "in the mood" crew remains as a reminder of what is possible when the human spirit meets the cutting edge of military technology. The 258 vehicles they destroyed are a testament to their lethal efficiency, but the 1,000 prisoners they captured are a testament to their role as liberators. In the final analysis, Lafayette Poole was more than just a tank ace. He was a symbol of a nation's resolve and the enduring power of a few good men to change the world. The tactical details of the Orkney engagement, for example, illustrate Poole's unconventional thinking. While most commanders would have slowed down in a darkened, potentially occupied village, Poole ordered Irvin to maintain speed. He understood that the sound of a roaring Sherman engine could be disorienting and that a fast-moving target is harder to hit. When they encountered the Panther, Poole didn't hesitate. He didn't wait for a perfect shot, he took the first viable shot. This split-second decision-making was the difference between life and death. The "in the mood" crew didn't survive because they were lucky, they survived because they were faster, more aggressive, and more decisive than their opponents. Furthermore, Poole's use of the spearhead doctrine was a masterclass in armored warfare. He didn't just move his tank forward, he integrated his fire with the infantry and the air support. He was a master of the radio, coordinating with the other tanks in his platoon and the U's, the nickname for the 3rd Armored's supporting elements, to ensure that his point tank was never truly isolated. This networked approach to combat was decades ahead of its time and was a primary reason for the division's success. Poole was the node through which the lethal power of the spearhead was funneled. The psychological bond between the crew members was so strong that even decades after the war, they spoke of each other with a reverence that bordered on the sacred. They had shared the most intense 81 days imaginable, and that experience had fused them into a single entity. They were the 5-man army, a group that operated with a singular purpose and a collective soul. This human element is often lost in the technical analysis of tanks and guns, but for Lafayette Poole, it was the most important factor of all. He knew that a tank is just a box of steel. It is the men inside who give it life and lethality. Lafayette Poole's career remains a pinnacle of achievement in the history of armored warfare. He was the man who turned the Sherman into a legend, the commander who led from the front, and the Texas farmer who showed the world that American grit was the most powerful weapon of all. His 258 kills are a matter of record, his crew's devotion is a matter of legend, and his place in history is secure as the greatest tank ace of the Second World War. The story of "In the Mood" is a story of triumph over adversity, of skill over machine, and of the enduring legacy of the American soldier. Would you like me to go into more depth about the specific mechanical differences between the 3 "In the Mood" tanks, or perhaps analyze the Battle of Stolberg in even greater tactical detail?